Okay, so this video is going to be the first of a series that I'll be making on music theory. In this video, I'll be talking about one of the most foundational elements of understanding music theory, and that's note recognition. Notes are like the atomic structure of the concepts that will be discussed in music theory. They're like the very foundation of everything else that will be talked about in music theory. So mastering them is really important in starting to understand music theory. And with our technology now, learning to master note recognition is easier than ever.
I have become technological. Call me Mr. Computer Brain.
And I have some very good ways in helping you learn to do this. But I'll also be showing you other ways to do it that's completely free.
Yeah, I like it when it's free.
I think one of the many reasons why people, especially guitarists,
That's right, I said it, Jimmy. You know who you are.
shrink away from learning music theory is because the way people speak about music theory is by using the universal language of music, which is notation, and not just the guitar-only language, which would be tablature. You see, instead of having every instrument have its own individual notation, because that would be way too confusing for them to all communicate together.
Hey, check out this new piece I wrote. No, I don't think that's until bar 5.
Instead, back in the day, they just decided, okay, this is the universal language of music, and we'll all learn this so that we can communicate with each other. So that's why tablature, even though they're like the guitar's home language, meaning like the innate language of that country, it's kind of like how many nations in the world will learn English, because English is kind of like one of the universal languages. So if you learn English, you can communicate with people from all sorts of different countries, even if they all speak different languages. Yes, even Jicka-baka bika-popo. So that's the same in the sense that musicians will use notation so they can communicate with each other cross-instrumentally. And notation isn't even really that bad. Some people, I think, just think that it's difficult, and then it becomes like a self-imposed limiting belief.
I just can't do it. I just can't do it.
Yo, I haven't even said anything, bro. Or perhaps they never had somebody like really break it down and show them and explain it to them in such a way that made it click. First, we're going to talk about what a staff is and what a clef is.
Don't make me use my clef on you.
Because these are two important terms to understanding the framework from which the note exists on. The staff is the part of the music that has 5 horizontal lines. The clef is the symbol that goes on the start of the staff, and the clef indicates the range that the staff will have. For instance, a bass clef or a treble clef both go on a staff, but when the bass clef goes on the staff, it then indicates that those 5 horizontal lines are going to be lower than if the treble clef went on that staff.
Okay, yep. The staff is the lines.
And the weird looking pattern
It's the clef.
Also, although there are many clefs, treble clef, bass clef, C clef, and you can have various different types of C clefs, and the neutral clef, which is used for drums. The main two that people normally focus on when they're talking about music theory is the treble clef and the bass clef. So we'll just focus on those for now. And they especially focus on these two as represented by a grand staff, which just means that the treble clef and the bass clef are together as one giant clef kind of thing.
I am the giant clef.
Hey, if you find this content valuable or you want to see more videos like this, then be sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and also hit the bell icon to be notified when I make new videos. Also, it can just really help my channel with the YouTube algorithm. Thank you for your support. Okay, so now that we have that covered, I'll show you how you can identify these notes. Okay, so when learning to identify the notes, you want to master 4 things, which really is just 2 things: lines and spaces.
Lines and spaces, spaces and lines. You got that, Jimmy?
It's 4 things because we're applying it to the treble clef and the bass clef. So we'll be doing the lines on the treble clef and the spaces on the treble clef, and then the lines on the bass clef and the spaces on the bass clef. So here we go. So first I'm just going to write here lines. This one's going to represent the lines. And then I'm going to write here spaces. Okay, so first the lines. So if we hit every line on the treble clef, which will look like this on the treble clef staff, then the notes we get, I'm sure you've heard this one before, is every good boy deserves fudge. Another way to say this is every good buddy deserves friends.
You're my only friend, Jeremiah.
So that there's many ways you can go about it, but that's just some of the ones that you can use to start to master the notes on the staff. Very simple, right? Every good buddy deserves friends. Okay, so for the spaces, it's even easier. See, it's each of the spaces on the way up. And what we're going to call these here is F, A, C, and E. So it just spells out face.
Face.
So that's very easy. Okay, now we're going to do the lines on the bass clef. So let's do the lines here. Same thing. Now, the lines on the bass clef are very easy because, like up here, we said every good buddy deserves friends. Down here, we're just going to start on the G. We'll do the exact same thing all the way up to friends. And then the last note is going to be always. So it becomes good buddies deserve friends always.
Good buddies deserve friends always.
Okay, so you can see that they're the exact same thing, except this one here starts with the every, and this one down here starts with the good. So they have the same notes, G, B, D, and F, just like at G, B, D, and F. But this last one here has an A at the end. So every good buddy deserves friends for treble clef lines, and good buddies deserve friends always for the bass clef lines. Now we're going to do the spaces for the bass clef. So just the same thing. We're going from the bottom up to the top. And this one is really easy. It's just ace, just spells the word ace, G. So I like to tell my students that ace G is this little mouse who flies this rocket ship, and he's really good at flying it, and that's why they call him the ace. And G because he's actually a genius because he built the rocket ship himself. So
No, my dear friend. It's Ace G, not Ace Cheese, though I do prefer it.
Ace G. Okay, so if we look at it again one more time, is we have for the lines for the treble clef, we have every good buddy deserves friends. And for the lines for the bass clef, we're starting from the G now and stepping over that E there. We have good buddies deserve friends, and now we're adding in the always at the end there. Okay, so they're basically the same. Now with the spaces for the treble clef, it's just spells face, F-A-C-E. And the spaces for the bass clef, it just spells ace G, A-C-E-G. There you go. Okay, so that's it. But you're going to need a way to practice these. So that's what we're going to head on to next.
Practice time.
Okay, so this is the free way. And it's going to be for if you're on a desktop computer or a laptop computer. But it won't work for phones.
I can't not use my phone.
Put the phone down now, Jimmy. Never. Put it down. Put it down. Never.
For phones, you have to use apps, but we'll get into that after. So all we're going to do here is we're going to click in the search menu at the top here in my web browser, and I'm going to type in musictheory.net. You click that there, click exercises, and you're just going to go to here, note identification, and you see it already has just the staff and the treble clef, and then we can click up here, the gear icon at the top right here, and we can set the treble range. So I usually like to set it for the top line and the bottom line. This is because it's good to just practice the notes in the staff itself, although there are things known as ledger lines, which are notes above the staff, but we don't have to get into that yet. You can just practice the notes within the staff itself. So you bring it to the bottom line and the top line. Next, we can click here on the clefs to choose the grand staff, which will give us both the treble clef and the bass clef. But when you're first starting this stuff out, sometimes it's good to just practice one clef at a time. So let's just stick with the treble clef for now. We go back. Okay, so remember the lines on the treble clef, if you remember, is every good buddy deserves friends. And the spaces on the treble clef spells face. So F-A-C-E. So therefore, this note here, F-A, will be A, right? The lines are every good buddy deserves friends. So every good, this one's G. Every good buddy deserves, so that's D. And you want to do these enough that you get to the point where you don't have to, you've reached a really good point of note recognition when you don't have to think every good buddy, whatever, deserves friends in order to figure out what the note is. But you've reached a really good spot when you can just see the note and know exactly what it is. So just watch this here. B, D, F, C. So that's really good when you can get that part where you can just see the note and know what it's called. Okay, so then that's practicing with the treble clef. This is really good to do it with this because it will tell you if you're right or wrong. And so it'll give you that feedback. Okay, you can also click this gear icon again. Let's switch it to bass clef. And remember the lines on the bass clef is good buddies deserve friends always. So this is the top line, which is A, always. The spaces on the bass clef spells, remember, Ace G. Use that little mouse who flies the rocket ship. So A, C, E, G. A, C. So therefore this one's a C. A, right? So good buddies deserve friends always. Oops. You see we've got one that's, I know what this one is E, but you don't want ones that have ledger lines. So let's just go back and reset the range here. We'll drag it so the top note is the top line and the bottom note is the bottom line. Okay, and you can just practice this like that. And again, like I said, you've reached a really good point when you can just see the note and know exactly what it is without actually having to think about it. You don't have to do the every good boy deserves fudge or whatever, or good buddies deserve friends always. You can just see the note and know exactly what it is. So once you have each of the clefs by themselves, you can click here again and click on clefs and click on grand staff and then set the range so it's the top line and the bottom line of the bass clef. Let's go out. And then you can just practice it like this. Now you can practice both. Now this is so valuable. I tell my students that if all they did for the entire week was practice their note recognition, I would be totally happy with that because that's how much value can be found within learning the notes. Hey, what have you been doing all week?
Notes.
Like just notes? And a big portion of it is actually just practicing it over and over and over again. So you can just get it into your mind and just know what the note is. The faster you can just kind of know what the note is, the easier all of the rest of everything else you're going to be doing will become.
F sharp, D flat, D flat.
Okay, so just if you really focus in on this and this is all you do for like a month or something and like you just sit there for like, I noticed at one point my bass clef wasn't as strong as my treble clef. So I got this app and I did the same thing and I just sat there for the entire time playing the bass clef over and over and over and over and over. And I really noticed that my sight reading got much better after I had done that. So I highly, highly, highly recommend this. Okay, so I just wanted to say one thing about this. Some guitarists watching this might think, why should I learn the bass clef when it's just, the treble clef is what the guitar is going to be playing? Well, the reason why you want to learn the bass clef as well is because the treble clef and the bass clef are used for speaking about music theory. And even though the guitar stays in the treble clef, for being able to speak music theory, you're going to have to know the treble clef and the bass clef. And if you know both, the really cool thing is, once you know music theory and you know the notes and everything, you can move to other instruments as well a lot easier. So if at some point you wanted to pick up piano, well, you'd have the treble clef and the bass clef. As you're learning about theory, you have the treble clef and the bass clef. So you can see, you get a more broad picture of what's going on musically speaking, and you can communicate with the instrumentalists who are going to be using the bass clef. Essentially what you have is the high instruments and the low instruments. And so don't just stick to the high instruments with the treble clef, but also do the bass clef so that you can see the bass side of things as well. Also, the deeper we go into music theory, you're really going to need to have your bass clef just for understanding these fundamental concepts. But yeah, so really don't just master your treble clef, guitarists. Do the treble clef and the bass clef.
All I know is the G chord. I ain't see why I need to know nothing else.
This will really open you up to being an all-encompassing musician, where it's kind of like knowing English and being able to travel from your home country to like all these other countries that also speak English. So by knowing music theory and notation, you'll be able to not only communicate with other instrumentalists from different that play different instruments, but you'll also be able to pick up those instruments and play them a lot easier than if you didn't know notation.
All I know is the E string. I don't see why I need to know nothing else but the E string.
Just like you would be able to travel to another country that speaks English and be able to communicate and start a life there, even though you've never lived in that country before. It'll just be so much easier. So I really hope you understand this. Okay, so I showed you the first way which you can do, which is free if you're using a laptop or a desktop computer. But what if you're trying to do it with your phone and you need to use an app or something like that? Well, luckily for you, I've researched apps with my students. Now I'm going to show you two things. I'm going to show you one for the Apple iPhones and another one for the Android phones. Now, because I use Apple iPhone, I know the Apple app much better than I know the Android one. But because many of my students also have Android phones, I figured out a good one for them as well. Although personally, I don't think it's as good as the Apple one, but nonetheless, they're both very good. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, so the one for the Apple iPhone is called Notes Trainer, and the icon looks like this. The second one for the Android is also called Note Trainer, and it looks like this. So there you go. I think they're like $2 each or something like that. So it's fairly inexpensive. But now you have the two options. You have the free option with the laptop and desktop computer with the website, and you have the $2-ish apps that you can get for your specific iPhone or Android. Now these work basically the same way. You can just click in the settings and set it for the specific note ranges that you want to work on. But yeah, that's it. And I would just suggest playing those note games as much as you can. Play it a little every day. And mastering the note recognition is the foundational element of understanding music theory. And again, I think this is why lots of people are scared of music theory, like I said before, especially guitarists, because they have to learn notation in order to learn music theory. And that's not like 100% true, because you can still learn music theory without learning notation. I just mean that most of the time when you're learning about music theory, you're going to be speaking about it through notation and not through tablature or something. Think of music theory as like a giant warehouse full of all these tools that like thousands and millions of people have gone into creating, and over thousands and thousands of years. Stuff that you couldn't even imagine happening across in your own lifetime, just because it's built off of each other. Just like, like a train is built off of somebody who figured out about the wheel. Right? So don't try to reinvent the wheel. Just go to the warehouse, check out what they have there, and try out the different tools. See if you can, see if this thing's beneficial to you. See if, you use that and you go, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's a cool little pattern. Or whatever, that over there, right? Kind of like the difference between like a cave person who has like a rock to dig, and then somebody goes, hey, we have shovels here, right? They're like, whoa. And then there's somebody who's digging with a shovel, and then somebody shows up and they're like, hey, we've got a motorized tillers here, right? And then next thing you know, they're using motorized tillers. But yeah, all in all, music theory is really valuable and important, and I'm not sure why people just don't want to learn it. Like, aren't you at all curious? If you're passionate towards music, aren't you at all curious to know what other people have found through thousands of years before you, and how you can apply it in your own playing? Anyway, that's the video. I hope you found it valuable. Write in the comments what your favorite joke was, or if you like the jokes at all, or questions you might have. If you're watching this on Facebook, be sure to come check me out on YouTube. There'll be a link in the description. Also, I'm going to be teaching an entire series on theory, so stay tuned. Rock on.